And we will move on to, we have two more bills by Representative Bennett. Let's see here. I'm going to take them in order. 5164. This is an act relating to education regarding the health and safety of pupils, allowing students in public schools to possess and use topical sunscreening products. This states that children enrolled in grades K through 5 would need a note from their parents or guardian to possess this sunscreen on school property. Representative Bennett, if you can give us a little bit of background on this bill, I would appreciate it. Representative Bennett, House Bill 5164.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Go right ahead, sir.
Okay, this bill I've ran for the last 3 years. It had some difficulties over in the Senate, and that's where we came up with the K through 5 would need notes from their parents. We have a problem with skin cancer. A lot of people are getting skin cancer from getting sunburns when we were less educated, when we were young. Now we're trying to educate our kids to be aware of the sun, to be aware of the sunburn. So you get one sunburn, it can lead to it increases your chances of getting skin cancer. The dermatologists are in favor of this bill. They supported it for the last 3 years. I think this product here, this bill here, is a good one. It's agreeable with the Senate. Vice President McCaffrey is running it over in the Senate, so we should have better luck over there, I hope. But it's basically it. I'll take any questions, Mr. Chairman, if anybody has any.
Thank you, Representative Bennett. Are there any questions from the committee? If not, at this time, I will take our first call-in testimony. I believe we have Leonard Lopes coming in. Okay, if everyone would stand by for Leonard Lopes. Mr. Lopes, this is Representative Casey from the Health and Human Services Committee. How are you this evening?
Good, how are you?
Good, sir. We have you on speakerphone. You are before the Health and Human Services Committee regarding Bill 5164 regarding the sunscreen product use for children in school. Go right ahead.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Happy New Year to yourself and members of the newly formed Health and Human Services Committee. My name is Leonard Lopes, and on behalf of the Personal Care Products Council, I want to thank Chairman Bennett for his continued leadership and his stick-to-itiveness on this bill. Like he stated, we have been trying to get this important school safety measure passed. We've had a couple of discussions on the Senate side, but I think this is the fourth time. I think the fourth time is a charm. We have bifurcated the way in which, in the method in which the student can or and does not need a note from a physician. The K through 5 requires it, and from 6 to 12 does not. I think it's a great compromise. I want to once again thank this honorable House in advance for once again supporting this measure. And it's incredibly important that we protect our youngest students. As Chairman Bennett said, that even a few instances of sunburn can increase their risks of contracting skin cancer, and we need to do everything we can to prevent that from moving forward and happening to our youngest students. So with that, I just want to thank everybody once again and look forward to the House supporting this measure once again, and we can hopefully get it over the finish line.
Thank you, Mr. Lopes. Are there any questions from the committee for Mr. Lopes, please? Okay, Representative Giraldo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a question about what's the sort of precipice for pushing this? Has there been a scenario where sunscreen hasn't been allowed, or can you just talk more about sort of the background?
Oh,
I think
sure.
it makes
Sure, and I
definitely makes
apologize
sense.
to those persons who may not be familiar. Just so you understand that in schools in Rhode Island and in many jurisdictions, school districts have and states have adopted a zero drug tolerance policy. And because sunscreen has an FDA-approved drug, you must have a doctor's note. So, as you also know, that school districts now, and rightfully so, want their students to go out and to get exercise and to go on field trips and so on and so forth. And with that has come increased exposure to sun. And with that comes increased opportunities to get sunburn. So if you think of it in this context, if a school has 50 or 40 kids going on a field trip, it's going to take a considerable amount of time to apply sunscreen by the capable school nurse. At that point in time, it becomes almost a moot issue because now the recess is over. So it just is one of those basic common sense approaches to deal with a rather simple issue, but has rather severe consequences if we don't. So that's sort of the genesis in a nutshell.
Thank you. That makes perfect sense. And Mr. Chairman, if I may, just a quick follow-up question. It does seem like a pretty common sense situation here. Can you summarize whatever the prior arguments against it might have been? I'm not seeing that.
It's actually a good question. It seems to come up every year. I don't know if you know this, but I'm familiar with people like yourself. My mother served in your chamber, and she taught me one very valuable lesson: is there's no crying and lobbying. So if there's some compromises that need to be made and some discussions that need to be had in the other chamber, then I make them. So it isn't a critique of anyone who had some issues with it, but rather it's part of the legislative process that I hold so dear. So I would just say that it's needed to do some work on the Senate side, and I believe this bill accomplishes that goal.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lopes. We have,
Thank you, Chairman.
Stand by. We do have Representative Beal with a question as well.
Sure.
I know we're from K through 5, you need parent permission. So can you probably just re-emphasize on the why not 6 through 8 and only K through 5?
It's a good question. I appreciate it. There was a general consensus that students at that age possessed the maturity and the ability to use the product safely and ably. So and there seemed to be a lot of comfort level at that age. Just so you know, many states do not have such limitations. They just allow it from K to 12. But each state and each jurisdiction is different. There were some questions about K to 5, so that's why we sort of kept it at K to 5.
All right, just to follow up on that, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
So I know we're the parent permission for K through 5, but I think you're probably also aware that for 6 through 8, there are students are not allowed to bring certain substances on campus, most especially retardants yet. So and this is why the K through 5 and not 6 through 8 is still not clear to me yet because of because
sorry.
You know, there's no differences between like the kids from K through 5 and not 6 through 8. So I think the parent permission, you know, that's the piece I just not understanding.
Yeah, I think just by way of analogy, it's probably like the earlier piece of legislation that you were hearing, why 300 capacity as opposed to 100, and sometimes it's just a number that people can just agree with that will move an issue forward. So I can't give you anything more particular than that, quite frankly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to add
Thank you.
to.
Mr. Ropes, hold on, we have a few more questions, if you wouldn't mind. Representative Bennett, if you would hold, I have Representative Ackerman first.
No problem.
Representative Ackerman, go ahead.
Actually, Chairman, I wanted to comment on the bill. I don't necessarily have a question. One thing that, when I was working on my tanning bed ban, one thing that I learned is that there is a growing incidence of melanoma in young people. And this is a chance, an opportunity we have now to mitigate this. I know Representative Dave Bennett has put this bill in so many times, and I don't know if any of you know, he was actually recognized by the Dermatological Society for his efforts in this. So I think now's the time that we need to move forward with this. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Ackerman. Representative Bennett, if you would.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Am I still muted? All right. I just wanted to comment that with the 6th to 8th grade, they're more knowledgeable than someone from K to 5. They understand. I taught my grandkids. I have a swimming pool. I taught my grandkids about sunscreen a long time ago. I'm a victim of skin cancer. And that's because when we were little, we put on baby oil and ran out in the sun and stayed out in the sun all day. And then we find out now that the baby oil was the wrong thing to put on because you're cooking yourself. The process of running this bill would eliminate the question of an over-the-counter med. You still can't bring Motrin. You still can't bring a lot of things in there, which I will cross that bridge when I come to it. But sunscreen, we teach our kids at home, to use sunscreen. We on them a lot. At least I am. To put it on. Then when they go to school, they're told they can't put it on unless a school nurse does it. You have 20 minutes for your break. Well, average class is probably 20 kids. So a lot of kids might skip out. By the time that 20th kid is done, his break's done. It's over. They say, well, why you let them put it on themselves with mommy's permission? Well, because mom knows. And if mom's at home and she's teaching this to her children and says, okay, when you go to school, you go out on your break, I want you to put some on. And then they tell her, no, you can't do that. We're kind of defeating the purpose of the education the mom's giving. So, this is a good bill. It's a good bill, and we've worked hard on it. It's a simple bill, and we'd like to see it go through. I would. It's
Thank
ready.
you,
It's done.
Representative. We do have some more further testimony. Chris, do we have another call?
Good.
Okay, I believe next we're going to have Hannah Stern again from the ACLU, Rhode Island. I have her down as virtual. Who do you have next? Okay, let's bring on Randall Rose. Randall, are you with us? Hello, Randall. Okay. Stand by, everybody. Okay, is someone on the line with us?
Yes. Randall Rose here.
Randall Rose, this is Representative Casey again. We are on
Thank you,
House
Chairman.
Bill. We are on House Bill 5164 at Health and Human Services. If you would give us your brief testimony, please, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. And yes, I've supported Chairman Bennett's bill before on sunscreen, and I'm supporting it again. I think it's just a bad idea that that schools have been so resistant to allowing kids to have sunscreen without requiring kids to jump through a lot of hoops before they can use sunscreen in school. So this is a good bill. I just want to suggest one change to it. which is a very small change. I understand the language about making an exception for kids aged in kindergarten through 5th grade is being added for the sake of the Senate. And the Senate, there are people in the Senate who would prefer to preserve the status quo as far as school districts' ability to restrict the use of sunscreen without a note, at least for the youngest kids. So I understand that language is being added for the sake of the Senate. So it's kind of a compromise. However, the way it's currently written, it actually makes matters a little worse because under current law, school districts are free to require sunscreen. School districts are free to ban students from having sunscreen without a note, or under current law, school districts are also free to allow students to have sunscreen without a note. So under current law, it's all up to the discretion of the school district. What the bill we have before us says is it's no longer up to the discretion of the school district. The bill that we currently have in its language says that for kids aged K to 5, school districts are not even allowed to let them bring sunscreen to school or school-related events unless they bring a doctor's note. So what that means is a 5th grader has to bring in a note to the school nurse, as well as a sunscreen, and the parents may not know about that at first. Or if even at even playing sports, the 5th grader, if the 5th grader goes to after-school sports, school-related activity, and the coach doesn't have the note, then under this bill, if it becomes law, the coach is required to not allow that kid to have sunscreen because the coach doesn't have the note, the school nurse has the note. So you have to bring lots of notes. Because this bill requires school districts forces school districts to not allow K to 5 students to have sunscreen without a note at any school-related activity. So what I would suggest is just change the wording of that a little. Don't make things worse than the current situation. Just say in lines 8 through 10, just change it to notwithstanding the foregoing, a school district may require that children in K through 5 can only possess sunscreen with a note from a parent or guardian. So just make sure it's still up to the school district's discretion, because we have gone through this period where school districts were unreasonably strict about forbidding sunscreen. Hopefully we'll get over that in the future, but we don't want to leave a legacy in the law where it's now enshrined in the state code of laws that whether the school district wants it or not, they still have to forbid it. We don't want to leave that bad policy enshrined in law. It wasn't in law before. Let's leave it up to the school district's discretion for K to 5 students. Thank you.
Thank you, Randall Rose. Are there any other questions from the committee regarding Bill 5164? If not, I believe we have one more telephone call. Thank you, Randall.
Thank you.
Hello, Hannah Stern.
Hi.
Hannah, this is Representative Casey again. We are on Health and Human Services House Bill 5164, and we await your testimony.
Perfect. Thank you so much, and thank you again, Chairman and members of the committee. Hannah Stern on behalf of the ACLU of Rhode Island. The ACLU of Rhode Island is supportive of this legislation. We think it's a very important piece of policy, but we'd also like to note that from our perspective, it also alludes to a larger issue, which is that DOH and RIDE regulations allow for students to carry and administer over-the-counter medications, but only if they have parental authorization, and then even then, only on a discretionary basis. So the ability to self-administer sunscreen, as this bill recognizes, is critical for student health, but this bill also wouldn't change the fact that, for example, under these DOH and RIDE regulations, that same student wouldn't be able to carry and self-administer sunburn lotion or anything else to treat a sunburn. So this is just a contradiction that our organization believes is deserving of further attention. We would urge the committee to consider enacting another expansive piece of legislation which addresses that type of problem, which is contained within the state regulations. So thank you for your time. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Hannah. Are there any questions from the representatives on the panel? Hearing none, that is our last testimony. If there are no other comments, I will close the hearing on House Bill 5164.